Welcome, everybody, to Practical Psychology Podcast, episode 40. Today, we are very happy. My name is Joseph Wong. I'm one of the co hosts. We have Tina Marie joining us for today. I want to introduce Tina Marie. Tina Marie has lots of destination and education. She has her MBA, Master of Science in International Management. She's also doing another master's in counseling psychology right now. Apart from that, she has been in the HR human resources for more than 15 years, and she's a chartered HR professional. And now, Tina Marie, welcome.
Thank you, Joseph.
Tina, let's go to the topic right away here.
Yeah, so today I would like to talk about mental health in the workplace.
Tina, mental health in the workplace is a huge topic because work affects a lot of people for the performance at work, income, and also their identity, also their families outside of work. If they're stressed at work, they have a lot of problems outside. Thank you for talking about this topic.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting for me, especially now that I have like two different lenses, right? I have my background as HR professional, and so I have, the employer perspective, the HR lens. But then now, as I'm close to finishing my Master of Arts in counseling psychology, now I also have the clinical perspective on it. And yeah.
So, Tina, you work in HR, you manage people, you are on the employee and also the employer side. Tell us more about it. What are the differences that people might not know coming from an employee and coming from an employer?
Yeah. So maybe I will start with the employer side. So HR usually is the employer representative, like just spoken from a legal perspective. And so, of course, when we talk about mental health in the workplace as HR, I'm directly involved in shaping the policies around this and looking into, what training opportunities are out there, for example, for our managers, right? Because to your point, we spend a lot of time at our workplaces, and if mental health challenges arise in our life, usually the first place where it comes up or people notice symptoms is actually in the workplace. And quite often it's actually the manager who might notice some of those symptoms. For example, you may notice some tardiness issues happening, right? Or maybe performance is changing, is dropping, or even somebody is working a lot of overtime, which seems unusual compared to how the person is normally working. And so it's a very interesting field actually, because I see a lot of change over the past years, especially as an HR professional. I can see the trend in the industry towards providing more mental health awareness training for HR professionals and then for managers, like from the employer perspective. And more employers here in Canada offer things like employee and family assistance program, right, at no cost to employees, to help with this, because access to service can still be a challenge from a financial perspective, and those programs allow for short-term counseling. So I will stop here for a moment and just talk a bit about the employee side. As an employee, quite often you are not actually aware that you may be faced with some mental health challenges. I actually found a study from Mental Health Research Canada that was published last year. And that study mentioned that over 39% of Canadian employees reported burnout as of last year. Well, that's close to almost half of all employees. It's a big number, right? And then it actually goes further in saying that over 52% of Canadian workers have experienced mental health challenges that actually affected their work. And then the study mentioned only 33% of those actually reported this to their employer. And, there could be different reasons for it, but one of them is still the stigma, right? And being afraid, me as an employee, if I disclose to my manager that I'm struggling, I have some things going on in my personal life or other things, I might be afraid that it will impact my job. Maybe I get fired. Whereas, as I said, there is a trend in the industry that there's more training for managers to actually have those conversations with employees and see what support can be provided. It has, of course, limitations, right? There's only so much employers can do. But definitely there's a lot of changes in the industry these days.
Tina, thank you for the education about the employer side and the employee side. And before talking to details, I want to ask you something first.
Mhm.
Because employees is the bigger proportion of people, and when people talk about the HR, they usually have this term, HR is not for us employees, it's for the employer. So, as you also briefly mentioned, when they want to seek help, they also worry about some of the job discipline.
Mhm.
So, as an HR professional dealing with this day to day here, how do you see this divide and gap? And because the worry is real, job
Mhm.
security.
It is, and it's true. And as I mentioned, from a legal perspective, HR does represent the employer. Like, for example, when things come to a court case, HR does represent the employer. That being said, as HR, our job is also to make sure that the employer follows all of the applicable legislation. So I'm located in BC, so that would be, for example, BC Employment Standards and WorkSafe BC, but also human rights applies. So while on a legal perspective, yes, HR does represent the employer, we still make sure that the employer follows all of those legislation. And going back to your question, yes, it's definitely a fair point that employees are afraid to speak up or reach out to HR because they are concerned about potential discipline. That being said, under human rights legislation in Canada, the employer has a duty to accommodate until undue hardship. But of course, the employer cannot do this if the employer doesn't know that something is going on. So the onus is on the employee to actually reach out, to the manager or to HR and say, hey, I would like to have more information about what your accommodation process looks like here at this company. And then as HR, I will tell the employee, this is our process. This is the information we need from you. And this is usually how we start this off. Fully speaking from an HR perspective, as HR, I don't need to know a diagnosis, right? All I need to know as HR is the prognosis and what accommodation requests may be required. As a company, we may not be able to fully implement this. It really is kind of like we need to know what are the accommodation requests, and then we will look into how we can implement this, at the company level.
Yeah. And Tina, here we talk about the challenges facing employees. And of course, there's also a lot of challenges in the employer side.
Yeah. And
What
this
are
is
some of the
actually,
challenges on the employer side that typical employees don't see?
yeah, well, great question. And so going back to the study I mentioned earlier here today, I can actually give you a number because especially, employers are quite number driven, right? When you have those conversations with higher up management, usually they want to have a number. So the study I mentioned earlier was talking about the burnout actually has a number to it. So they mentioned the burnout costs for employers were between around $6,000 up to $30,000 per employee per year. So this is a huge number, right? Think about like the absences, right? Absenteeism from work, somebody else has to pick up the slack, right? Or performance issue, which could impact quality of work or other things. So this is actually a big cost for employers. And then when you think about the expense, for example, for an employee assistance program, it's really, really small. I don't have a number right now, but I think, not sure if it's per month or per year. I think they pay around like $16 or $17 per employee. I think it's per year, I don't know, for the employee assistance program. So this is a really small number compared to if mental health kind of challenges progress, it has a bigger impact. So financially, a company is actually better off investing upfront, in those measures like
Mhm.
employee and family assistance program, extended benefits, including covering cost for sessions with mental health counselors, and investing in ongoing mental health awareness training for managers and HR. So there's definitely, if you do the cost benefits analysis, you can see you actually save money. I wouldn't say save, but the cost is lower if you be more proactive as a company.
And Tina, you mentioned about there's a trend in HR and the employer side. Tell me a little bit about those trends.
Mhm. Yeah, so one of the trends I have noticed over the past, I would say maybe 5 years, is HR is shifting towards something called trauma-informed HR. I think it's still pretty new in the industry, but for example, CPHR, BC, and Yukon, they started offering it as like a yearly training, twice a year now, and that shows, that they are more actively promoting a different approach to HR. For example, when I first learned about HR in school, that goes back to, I don't know, almost 20 years now. I still learned about HR as like human capital and those kind of terms. So HR has changed a lot. Now we say like human resources. Um, but with trauma-informed HR, it's shifting more about the awareness piece. And so I'll give you an example here. So let's say you have an employee and maybe a long-term employee, and all of a sudden you notice attendance issues, which seems unusual for the employee, right? So, and maybe in previous years, the first thing somebody would have done would have maybe even letting go that employee, or maybe, starting say progressive discipline, like doing written warning letter and so on. But through a trauma-informed lens, first to start with having those conversations with the employee. Usually the manager would have like a sit-down meeting, very informal, not disciplinary, and just checking in. Hey, how are you doing? Is there anything I can support you with? And those kind of things, those kind of conversations to see what support might be needed. Of course, if challenges, continue after that meeting, then, a different approach may be needed. But then, what we usually do, if it comes down to a written warning letter, we still try to acknowledge what the employee is going through without being like too personal. But for example, we do make reference to our employee and family assistance program, right? We make sure the employee has the information, they have the number, they can call, they know they can reach out to them online, they know this is completely confidential. Like we as an employer, we don't know who's using it or who is not, right? Speaking of it, the only thing that is being shared with us is the overall usage rate. And I can tell you, based on some examples that I have, it's less than 10% per year. So
Wow.
that shows you another disconnect between, going back to the original number I mentioned, 39% of employees reporting burnout last year, and all the companies who have, an employee and family assistance
Wow.
program in place, but less than 10% actually use it. And this is something that's available for employees at no cost. It's confidential. So that tells you something, right? There is a disconnect here.
And Tina, it is a really big disconnect. The
Hmm.
need is there. 39% experiencing burnout, almost close to 50%,
Hmm.
especially with the economy, times are bad.
Yeah.
On the other side here, you have the data. Less than 10%. The company pay money for
Hmm.
the employment assistance program for the insurance.
Yeah.
Confidential, the company don't get data. The only data is less than 10% usage.
Hmm.
So in a way, it's tough for the companies because it looks like there's a lot of need not met.
Exactly. Yeah. And, the company pays for it either way. And of course, there might be different reasons why there is this disconnect. But based on my experience and observation, one of the reasons is, or maybe two of the many reasons, the gap in the mental health awareness training for managers, right? Because managers and employees, they usually have the strong connection. Compared to employees and HR, the connection isn't that strong because we don't usually work day to day together.
Mm.
And so, if managers have this mental health awareness training, it's easier for them to promote programs like the employee and assistance program to employees, right? To mention, like, hey, we actually have this in place. Maybe this is something you want to take home and look into. Um, the other big part is, even if employees have the awareness, it seems like it's a big step to actually pick up the phone and call the number, right? This is a big challenge. So even if employees know, oh, this program here is in place, it's confidential, it's fully paid, but it's very challenging to actually, go online or send them a text or just dial the number of the employee assistance program to talk to somebody, either like the advisor support or to schedule counseling sessions. And so, what I have seen in mental health awareness training for managers is, um, in the training is, for example, that managers can help employees to take this first step. Obviously, there are confidentiality, legislation that we need to be aware of. But for example, a manager can offer, hey, let's maybe go for a walk or let's sit down here in my office together. And if you want, we can dial this phone number here together. I can sit with you. And of course, if the employees agrees to it, the manager can sit in there for the meeting when they schedule the first counseling session, right? And this might help to overcome some of the barriers because the employee is already in distress or is experiencing challenges, and then just having a support person there with them, somebody, they trust in that moment, it can sometimes help with reaching out, with taking the first step. But of course, it's a challenge for our managers, right? Because most managers, um, they don't really have the training for those situations, and this actually might put them, in stress because they might hear things and they don't know how to deal with this, right? It's not part of their job, so to say. And so the question then comes in, how do we support our managers
Mm.
in those situations?
Yeah, Tina, you mentioned about the EAP program is not being utilized when there's a need here. Between this gap, one of them can be mental health awareness training for the managers.
Mhm.
And you also mentioned the difficulty is when people get hired as a managers, the job description does not include provide mental health awareness training.
Correct. Yes.
So from your observation right now, what are some of the typical mental health awareness training that you have seen so far? Do they bring in people from outside to do it? How does it work?
Yeah. So what I've seen so far is usually somebody from outside that's delivering the training, which has pros and cons. I mean, the definitely pros from outside. Those are those trainers are usually experts in their field. I have seen trainers with a background in mental health, like a clinical background. I have seen trainers who more have like I don't know, like management or HR background, or even a combination of both. Um, but of course, when you have somebody coming in from the outside, the challenge is they don't necessarily know. the company set well. They don't necessarily know the unique challenges that company and the employees may face, because it's very different. For example, if you have a company that's usually focused on, providing, I don't know, maybe accounting services. This is very different from a company that's really more focused on retail, right? There are different needs. And while, of course, you can share certain things with the trainer upfront so they can more customize the training, there would definitely be a benefit if you have somebody more in-house, maybe as a co-facilitator, or even somebody who like is trained to deliver that training, right? Like train the trainer module. So there are definitely different things out there. So it all comes down to the pros and cons. Of course, cost, right, is another thing. Like how much money does a company want to invest in this, right? And yeah, so definitely different options.
Okay, yeah. Tina, you mentioned about having the outsiders here is pros and cons here.
Mhm.
And Tina here, when they do the mental health awareness training, usually how long?
Yeah, I mean, trying to remember, I think it's usually like a couple hours or maybe half day. Um, I think there are programs out there who might be like a full day or even maybe like 3 half days. It again depends on what kind of training the company is seeking. Like obviously you can train on a lot of things, right? When we talk about mental health in the workplace, you can touch on topics like, bilateral violence, right? Like those kind of things. Like basically it's kind of the non-verbal, non-physical violence, or could also be verbal, but some people may not actually consider it as kind of violence in the workplace. So this alone is a big topic, right? And there's actually, I think it's called the CTRI in Canada, that offers a lot of training for workplaces, because what I really like about them is they have the clinical side, so they have the CTRI, but then they also have their sister organization that's more business oriented. They both have the same founder, but in their training, they're able to combine both. So I know it's kind of free promotion now for them here, but I really like that company because they bring in this unique perspective to training.
I see, okay. And for this organization, what type of training do they provide?
Yeah, so different kind, it can be like on-demand training online. You can attend, online workshops, like live workshops. They offer train the trainer. They also host in-person workshops across Canada, or you can even
Mm.
ask them to come to your location, to have a trainer come to your location. So they offer like the full spectrum, basically, depending on what the company is seeking.
And Tina here, we talk about the employer side. They can do the mental health awareness training for the managers here.
Mhm.
And now let's go into the employee side. Because for the employee working for a company, they have to kind of wait for the employer to take charge, to hire people to do that, cost money. If the employer doesn't do it, then what can they do to increase this awareness of they're burning out, they're struggling for the employees and the family?
Mhm. It's a good question, because I recognize each company is different, and it's also
Mhm.
with HR. It's hard to
Mm.
say, just go to your HR person, because same as every company has a different leadership style. It's the same with HR professionals. We all may have a different approach to HR. Um, if a company offers employee surveys, this might be a good place, to mention the need for additional mental health
Okay.
support, because employee surveys, are confidential, and it's a good way to provide feedback. Um, if employees have a good relationship, with their manager, or the head of the company or HR, I would certainly encourage just having those open conversations, just saying like, oh,
Okay.
I noticed this workshop or this training, or this company offers this particular employee perk or benefit. Is this something we could look into as a company? So kind of framing it this way might open up some conversations.
Okay. Tina, I'm thinking about this here. Because, for example, let's say if we put into a circle, on one side is the employer, on the other side is the employees. Right now, the fact is the employees need more help, and
Mhm.
there's a gap. They're not utilizing the EAP, which is a fact.
Yeah.
And we are talking about the employees here when they seek help. I wonder whether there's anything that they can do outside of this circle. For example, for a given individual here, the employment, health, wellness can exceed a given company.
Mhm.
For
Yeah.
example, let's say they're in a job right now. If they need help, the help might be needed beyond that company, might be in the next job and all that.
Mhm.
So, from your perspective here, what would you comment on that? Because for a given person, a job may be 2 to 3 years, some people maybe 5 to 10 years, and your role to train them to look beyond that.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something, if employees want to, they can also have those conversations with their counselor, right? If they are in
Mm,
counseling already. So,
yes.
you can talk about like career health, career planning,
Mm,
but more from a clinical lens.
mm,
Um, but also thinking about, workplace environment. So, because for example, job descriptions usually include like the job demand analysis, which should include ideally what are the not just the physical components to a job, but also the mental and emotional component. And so, as an employee or client, you could actually have those conversations with your counselor and say, for example, oh, I'm actually interested in working in this profession, but is that actually something that may be a fit to my you know to myself and what I'm seeking, from an emotional, mental, and physical perspective, like what I'm seeking in a job, like my needs and my wants, and as a clinician, then I actually can provide the clinical lens. I can do different kind of assessments, and I can help the employee or client in that case look at this and maybe come up with different options. For example, um, I'll just make something up here. If I have a client who is already struggling with a lot of anxiety, and if they're considering working in a like high stress job or job that may put or expose them to even more stressful or anxiety rich situations as part of their normal day to day, this may not be the best fit for the client, right? And so I definitely see opportunities in that area, just helping the client to explore, what their ideal career looks like from a clinical lens, but also from an HR lens.
mm. Tina, you are mentioning about how the clinical psychology has a lot of application to help an individual to look beyond this current job, but long-term employment well-being, income security, other things here.
Mhm.
And I want to bring to attention here because Tina, you're doing something along the line right now for their education in Rising Star Canada,
Yes.
and you are in charge of the discipline about educating people about the employment wellness, and
Mhm.
you have developed a curriculum here.
Correct.
So for you, what is your intention or the outcome that you want to get every time when you discuss this with an employee?
Yeah. So, as you can tell, this is a topic I'm very passionate about, career health and career health planning. And obviously, it's a little bit different if you talk to somebody who is new to the workforce, who might be still in school or kind of preparing for their first job. In those cases, it would be really looking at, again, um, you know, what does your ideal career look like, and but also helping them to identify their strengths, because quite often, it's so hard for us to name even one or two strengths that we have, right? And so it's really something I'm actually excited about to help, employees and participants of the Rising Star program identify what are the strengths they already have, what are the skills they already have, right? And what are they looking for in a job? Not just basically like obviously you need to make money, right? But also what else would they like to get out of it? And also what do they want to contribute, to the organization? What's important to them? Right. And even now maybe talking about professionals who might be a little bit more seasoned, in their professional life. We could look into um, is it something like, are you interested in working like a non-profit organization or, for-profit organization? Because those things are quite different, right? Or working in a small organization versus a larger one, because your job, even though it can have the same title, can be very, very different. So I'm really excited about this, but really starting at the basic of basically meeting the employees where they're at, starting at, okay, let's look at all the great things you already have. Let's just put like a skills inventory and a strengths inventory together. And then participants actually will leave with a list of all the great things they already have in place. And we haven't even started our work together yet. And so I'm, yeah, quite excited about this.
Yeah, Tina, this is a very massive project here. Because as you are mentioning here, a lot of people, including myself, when we do a job, we are quite passive. When we settle in a job here, we're quite passive. We are relying on the company to take care of us.
Mhm.
And then when the economy hits, the job is not there, then we start to panic and we have to react to find a solution here. And that's why the importance of you teaching some of these skills to be active here. And it reminds me about this. I remember one time I was counseling a person who is a HR manager in a big corporations. And she mentioned about for years, for decades, she has been knowing in HR, there's a term, every job has a shelf life.
Correct. Yeah.
But when it comes to her, because her job is getting cut pretty soon and she has enormous difficulty. So
Mhm.
you just tell this sort of training is so important. People can know something but not active or doing it. The skills can become rusty.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's also a part of the program, we talk about two things. What are some activities you can do on an ongoing basis, right? To your point, so we can keep those skills fresh. So a very simplified example might be LinkedIn, having your LinkedIn profile and just keeping it fresh. You might decide maybe to post something every week, something either that's you're passionate about or something related to your current work or maybe something regarding your future work. So those would be things you can do on an ongoing basis.
Mm.
Many people mention networking, going to networking events or trying to build those connections, which you can do through LinkedIn. I personally resonate with those people out there who are more introvertive. It's hard for myself even to go to those networking events. I strive more in one-on-one meetings and conversations, right? But for those things, you can, for example, um, reach out through your network on LinkedIn and see if you can meet with somebody like in person or virtual, like kind of like a coffee meeting, do like a mock interview or just having a chat about their work, how they got into their current position, and those kind of things. Yeah, again, just to your point, to keep your skills fresh. Yeah.
Mm. Since we're here, Tina, because I know that the way that you design these workshops, you have a curriculum and then you have a checklist, a scoring system, so people know different areas they need to do better or these areas is already done good enough.
Mhm.
You're sort of creating almost like a physical exercise program that requires weekly continuing care. For example, some people might be doing a lot of weight training but no cardio. Then they have to bring up the cardio here. So one of the typical items, if you were to pick one for career, what is one of the career maintenance activity that a person should do on a monthly basis? Same as people should do cardio once a week, weight training maybe once a week, flexibility, stretching maybe 2 times a week, something like that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a good question because I think it really depends on what type of person we talk about. As I mentioned, some people, they're more extroverts. They strive in networking events. So for those, I really would encourage to see what's out there, free events to go there or just to connect with
Okay.
other people. Like keeping your LinkedIn, up to date, posting things online, or even um, you can have your own Facebook page, or you have your own website, you post a blog, or you create some videos kind of like promoting yourself. Um, and or you could become a participant in the Rising Star project where we meet once a week. Yeah, or you could even look into um, yeah, professional development, especially when we look into your current skill set or strengths. Maybe there is a free course out there that you can take at your own time, right? To continue your own personal and professional development. So I think there's plenty of things out there. It just depends on um, the type of person you are and what is of interest for you. Because if you're doing something that you enjoy doing, that really, keeps your energy up, then this is fun, right? Whereas, if you're doing something that feels more draining based on your personality, then maybe we should look into a different activity.
So Tina, you're mentioning one of the ongoing career maintenance activity is networking.
Hmm.
And then depend on different people, extrovert, maybe social gatherings. The
Hmm.
introvert maybe set up one-on-one meetings. But whatever it is, the networking has to be an ongoing process so they don't get rusty or out of touch and
Yes.
passive. Okay. Yeah. So Tina, here I know that you designed the curriculum for Rising Star, and and right now I know that you're also doing your own curriculum for your own practice consulting. So when will us be expecting these workshops coming? Next time we log into your website.
Yeah. So right now I have two different workshops that are ready to go. One is starting next week. It's a free workshop for all practicum students. It's called Career Health Hour. So it's a weekly workshop, and for the first 4 weeks, we will focus on the basics. So we will talk about the different seasons, in a working life, so to say. We will talk about green flags, red flags, and what does a sustainable career look like. And then in addition, I think it's starting July 14th, I will offer a 4-week boot camp that's more focused for new counselors. It's about finding your niche. But I'm also planning to offer some workshops maybe later this year that I might even offer for non-counseling professionals, maybe something more from an HR perspective, but combined with the clinical lens. I don't have a timeline for this yet, but it's definitely something I want to offer in the future because um, I see that there's probably a lot of interest in there, just based on my combined experience as HR and clinician.
Oh yeah, Tina, there will be a lot of interest because for most counselors, they are a little bit like medical doctors. Usually they're self-employed.
Hmm.
And those will be very different from the people, the majority of the population, mostly they're employees.
Hmm.
So a lot of the population will benefit from those employment health strategies and workshops that you're offering.
Yeah.
And I am very excited to see those workshops too, offering to employees. You actually go into do workshops, do trainings for employees in NGOs, corporate, and other places, or including employer.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, Tina, here, what is the one-line message of takeaway you want to give the viewers?
Yeah. Good, good question. I mean, going back to our topic from today, it was about mental health in the workplace. I think my main message is that it's normal. It's normal to experience mental health challenges. Doesn't matter if it's at home, if it's in the workplace. And I know there's still some stigma around there, but I would really encourage everybody just to have those conversations, with your trusted person, if it's at home or with somebody at work you trust, and also to take advantage of the programs that are in place, especially if your workplace provides something like the Employee and Family Assistance Program. Check it out, even if you're not, experiencing any mental health challenges. Right now, they have a lot of educational stuff or just some life coaching or other things similar to the other programs out there. So just check it out, give it a call, explore it. Or as Joseph mentioned, we have the Rising Star project, coming up. So feel free to check this one out. And yeah,
Thank you so much, Tina. Here, we'll also put your personal contacts in the description. So, employee, employers, corporate, companies, and other fellow clinicians and psychologists, counselors can contact you for more questions.
sounds good. Thank you.
Tina, we are very happy to have you. We'll have you again soon.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joseph.